Before we start our podcast, I would like to acknowledge and pay respect to the Indigenous keepers of the traditional and unceded lands upon which the Inspiration Station podcast is produced. The Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, Katzie, Coquitlam, and Tawasin nations, whose ancient relationships with their land continue to this day, always was and always will be Indigenous land. Welcome back to the Inspiration Station podcast, brought to you by the Charles Chang Institute for Entrepreneurship at Simon Fraser University. This episode, we focus on one of the key foundational elements of entrepreneurship, falling in love with the problem, not the solution. Get ready, here we go. Let's just go 3, 2, 1.
Okay.
Ready?
Ready.
Okay. 3, 2, 1. I feel like we were off. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Welcome back to the Inspiration Station podcast, everybody.
Choo choo. It's a train.
It is.
It's
Good
not.
job. Well, we don't have a train sound effect for this season, so
Oh.
you can be the honorary choo choo.
Okay, well then I have to practice that a little bit more.
Well, you already did it.
Okay.
I'm using that cut. My name is Carson Keller, and I am your host over the series of the Inspiration Station podcast. I have an incredible guest here today. This is Christina Wong, everybody. Before we start the episode for today, I'm going to introduce Christina. So without further ado, let me dive into my screen so I can just I'll read your bio.
Why am I sweating?
You don't need to sweat. Do you need an oil ball like that? Christina Wong is the executive director and co-founder of Employ to Empower, an organization dedicated to providing local Vancouver residents with access to personal development and entrepreneurial resources. She is also a Simon Fraser University psychology major with a specialization in applied behavior analysis. By
Sorry.
making noises as if you've never heard this before. By providing opportunity through a hand-up, not handout approach, Christina has spearheaded the creation of programs that offer business mentorship opportunities to individuals facing employment and social challenges. Her significant contributions include the development of Employ to Empower's Basic Business Fundamentals and Soft Skills course, designed for local entrepreneurs. Employ to Empower passionately advocates for a positive change in the downtown East Side community, aiming to eliminate the stigma associated with its residents and ensure their visibility, voices, and validation. To foster open dialogue, Christina initiated the Cardboard Project, a platform that engages local entrepreneurs in the downtown East Side with the broader public to raise awareness and amplify the voices of these individuals. She is driven by her dedication to reshaping conversations about poverty and homelessness, envisioning a stigma-free downtown East Side community. Christina frequently challenges stereotypes through experiential events, including the Cardboard Project 1.0, 2.0, 3.0, 4.0, and the most recent Cardboard Project 5.0.
I was waiting for your clap.
So, without further ado, passengers aboard the Entrepreneurial Express, Inspiration Station listeners, please welcome Christina Wong.
Choo choo.
Yeah, there it is.
Oh, that's so cute. I know you say that they board the train.
Yeah.
That's adorable.
Yeah, you're listening to the podcast, of course, Inspiration Station.
Yeah, freaking genius.
Where else are you gonna go? On a plane station? Those don't exist.
Yes, don't know that you'd be reaching new heights.
That's actually a great time. Maybe, you know what? That's a conversation for another time.
I'm here until like 2 p.m.
This is actually going to be a 5-hour episode if you were wondering. So, as I mentioned in your little introduction, co-founder and executive director of Employ to Empower, quite the spectacular organization, and you've done some really incredible things. So I want to know, just right from the beginning, what inspired you to embark on this journey?
I was looking at this question and I don't know why I was struggling to answer it, but then I realized that like our why was twofold. There's the personal why and then there's the community why. I think for my personal why, I think like growing up I moved like multiple times between families, so quite honest, I felt like a bit of a misfit and I didn't really know where I belonged. And so I also, growing up as a kid, like really like was curious as to why people lived in the streets, and since I never got answers from like my family, my friends, or my teachers, I just decided to volunteer in the neighborhood since I was 14. And that was when I felt my first sense of belonging, interestingly enough, because through meeting and talking to residents over the years, and that was grade 9, and I think I'm turning 31 this year, so it's about 16 years ago, I was able to learn about some of the like barriers that people were facing in the neighborhood. And there's 2 key lessons that actually shaped Employed Empower today. And the first one was, listen to what people need rather than assume.
Okay.
And this lesson was learned through having a wonderful conversation with a resident in the community. I was giving him a care package, and he basically was like, don't really need this, give it to someone else who needs it. Like, I actually have a haircut that I need for my job interview. And I think that was a really important moment, because that was powerful, like, insight for me to understand, oh, well, what we think people need isn't actually what people need. And it's like, you go to Starbucks and get your coffee. They're not going to say, here's a pumpkin spice latte, when what you want is what is called cold brew. I actually don't drink Starbucks very much. So it's the importance of just that piece. And then that inspired something called the street store after talking to that wonderful gentleman. The street store, for people who haven't heard of it, it's like a one-day like free pop-up shop. People facing homelessness can choose what they want and need. Through that event, thousands of people came, and we got to talk to some people, and we learned that there's a lot of people involved in entrepreneurship, actually, and a lot of artists, a lot of talent out there, but just needing a bit of resources and opportunities. Sometimes people don't realize they need the opportunity until the opportunity is there. So we kind of do that through Employed Empower now, because after meeting many artists, I'm like, oh, wow, that's kind of cool. Like, entrepreneurship seems to be a popular alternative, and people making some extra money. But not only that, you're able to cultivate that like purpose and confidence. So that's kind of when I left my corporate job and started Employed Empower.
Wow.
And that is probably the shortest version you'll ever hear, because usually this goes for 20 minutes. I have to sit down like, Christina, this is a 20-minute episode, not 20 minutes per question.
As we've planned out the episode, my sort of thought is to go down the route of falling in love with the problem and not the solution. So what you have sort of identified as your problem in the lens of an entrepreneur is helping downtown Eastside residents in the entrepreneurship community. My next question for you, Christina, dives from that sort of philosophy of the episode is, what comes to your mind when you think of the phrase falling in love with the problem and not the solution?
I really had to think about this one, because I think this problem, or I would also maybe reframe it as a challenge that we face, is a bit different from traditional approaches, because like I guess the challenge that I noticed in the neighborhood was that about with a quarter of the neighborhood being involved in some form of entrepreneurship, and the reason for that behind it was actually because with chronic health challenges and disability and various other work and social barriers, it's really hard to work a 9 to 5, and unfortunately not all employers are inclusive in being able to give people like 2-hour, 3-hour shifts 3 times a week. So a lot of learning that problem and challenge like really inspired me to think, well, how can we make it more accessible for people? And I think when people can have that self-belief and believe that they are capable and that they have strengths to offer, we can do so much more. And I think we can do that through entrepreneurship, because entrepreneurship is unique. It requires you to, first of all, believe that you have strengths to offer, and then also you build capacity to unlock those strengths. And the tough thing is, some people always ask, like, well, but like, how do I get to that self-belief, right? And for us, what we try to do is use entrepreneurship as that vehicle to build that self-belief and then being able to do so much more, whether it's entrepreneurship or not down the line. So I found that really relevant to my personal journey, because I remember, my first point of contact when ETE began was actually talking to Sarah Lubick. And I remember telling her, I'm like, well, I don't really got a business degree, or I don't know if I can do that. I don't really know much about like starting your venture. And she and then she was like, well, there's resources out there. You can always ask for help and ask for mentorship. And the path for me, like from a bit of a vulnerability side, it took like everything in life, it's built. So I needed to constantly practice the mindset of, I can do it. I can do hard things, and I am capable. And there's days, of course, you don't feel that way, which is just the reality behind, entrepreneurship. Anyhow, I don't know if I answered your question.
No, you totally did. And we're arriving in this place of realizing that in order to inspire the people who Employ to Empower works directly with, you had to inspire yourself first for that to actually happen.
Yeah.
And I can imagine that's quite the journey for you to be on. Was there any sort of difficult challenges that you faced in the coming up to bring Employ to Empower to this amazing place where it is today?
Yeah, there's three things that came up. There was one, there was burnout, and I know it's such a common like topic for people who are in entrepreneurship. I'm trying to find the balance in the chaos a little bit, and then learning how to complete my stress cycle. I think I learned that actually removing your stress cycle actually, at least in my opinion, an anecdotal opinion, doesn't remove the stress. So it's actually completing the stress cycle that removes the stressor. In this podcast, I think it's the books by Emily Nagoski, Burnout, and Brene and Emily had this like badass like lightning podcast about like the 8 ways to complete your stress cycle.
Love it.
I probably remember only half of it right now, but the things that resonated with me was creative expression. So I mean, for you create music and you create podcasts, so that's like one way to complete the stress cycle. Actually, a 20-second hug. 20 seconds, has to be 20 though. Oxytocin. Crying's more of a release. Doesn't really like solve the issue, the stressor, but it's healthy to have that release.
Well, I can see how that comes into play with that completeness of the stress cycle.
Yeah. And so that was like a groundbreaking podcast that kind of carried me through like marvelous and messy moments. Finding funding was tough. Being in a charitable world, like government money isn't always sustainable. So sometimes you're just like up at night thinking like, oh my God, are we gonna make it? And then you do, but you still have this ongoing, it's like an endless train of thoughts. That's kind of a few of the challenges: burnout and funding.
Oh well, those two of the biggest things that come from being an entrepreneur as well. Just trying to find funding for anything is such a huge challenge these days.
Oh yeah.
And we had an event very recently called The Ins and Outs of Raising Capital.
Ooh.
And we had Chris Newman come in, and he was just talking about with Rachel Chase all of these like techniques and challenges that come about when you're trying to raise capital. And I was just sitting there like somebody who just works at the Chang Institute, and just like, oh my God, this is really stressful, and I'm not even an entrepreneur that's like making a business.
Like secondhand stress.
I'm not even trying to raise capital, and this is stressing me out. So I could imagine that was probably huge for you. I think burnout is an underrated topic that needs to have so many conversations about, because it happens to everybody, and everyone is so scared of talking about it because we live in this society that is all about productivity, and it values productivity over anything, and if you're not productive, then you're not valuable, and like there's all this self-worth stuff that comes around with it, and and it's just something that I've been thinking about recently. And you mentioned burnout, and I was like, that's it right there.
Yeah, and a part of like dismantling like this whole productivity-based mindset is like a beautiful quote that encapsulates that. It's like, remembering to be a human being as much as we are human doings.
Yeah.
So,
oh my gosh.
So that's like a nugget moment that somebody had shared. I don't remember where I heard it from. Who are you versus what you do? I think who we are, our values drive what we do. And that's, at least for I'm very privileged to live a values-aligned life. And I try to channel my compassion and curiosity, which are my 2 core values, and what I do, which is kind of makes sense that I ended up in the charitable space. So yeah, that's kind of where dismantling, burnout one day at a time comes from. And you're right, it is something that people maybe are afraid to talk about, whether it's cultural issues that are tied to it, or cultural upbringing.
Or societal beliefs that just like are collectively understood these days. I don't understand what that's all about either,
Yeah. Also, one thing that came to mind that I could probably answer more concretely is how you manage your emotions in leadership. If the nature of your venture is emotions based, because all of our we build relationships with people who face barriers on the daily, and sometimes people pass, and grief is arguably one of the toughest things that life can throw at us. But how do you show up authentically and come as you are, but also not impact the people around you when you're feeling big feelings? As human beings, we have big feelings sometimes. So I learned there was a good nugget about how if you're feeling heavy things at work or leadership, you can give people the high level of what's going on in the background, so you're not going really deeply into things, so that you don't create any unintentional anxiety. Being able to outright say, like, this is what's going on, I don't want to create any unintentional anxiety. It's not personal. It just kind of gives you like okay, good. Like, all right, I know what's going on in the background. And I found it extremely helpful, understanding how to work with our emotions in leadership, because there's
Yeah.
often this stoic belief that you have to be like, you have to shut up, like put your baggage at the door, but realistically it's not always possible. So I'm trying to do leadership a little differently, and it's hard because I'm an emotional person, but recognizing that not everyone has the emotional capacity to hold space for when you need a release. So anyway, it's kind of a different topic.
When you show up as yourself and bringing your own value to the table, that is where authenticity comes about, you know? And when you're trying to be your own authentic person, bringing all your emotions and your baggage with you, as heavy as it can be for some people, is sometimes very necessary, you know? But keeping in mind the communities that we're involved in and the people that we are working with, sometimes we have to be very careful about what we're sharing and the news that's shared, especially with everything going on in the world right now, you know. We're just talking about all of this and how important these little, seemingly little, but they're huge things really impact your business decisions, and they can inform how you go about your life. How about we take a break?
Yes.
Because I want to really dive deep into some of these stories from Employ to Empower. Okay. We'll be right back for more Inspiration Station podcast. 3, 2, 1. Perfect. We're back.
Yoo-hoo!
So before the break, we were talking about how to work with your emotions in leadership.
Yes, like 7 golden rules, and this ties to like, you know, the very human part of entrepreneurship, which is the struggles that we go through.
Yeah.
Because now that my team, it's grown 4 times since last year, from 2 to 8 people. You know, you have to not only be mindful of one person's like mental capacity, but everybody else's.
Yes.
And you have to really think twice. Like the moment you walk through that door, your team's going to know what day you're going to have. So you have to really think through, you know, how you want to show up. Just being able to take a moment to check in with yourself, have a good regulation plan, and then communicate that with your team at a high level. That's how you can still show up authentically and be honest about what's going on, but not go too deep into a spiral, because other people might not have the mental capacity to hold space for that, because everybody comes with things going on. We're human, right? So we have to be conscientious. Not to say we should, you know, it's not very dogmatic in the sense where you have to shut off all emotions, because that's not helpful, because emotions are actually very important data in decision making. Yeah. Don't make emotionally charged decisions. So if you know that you're emotional in the moment, and that's okay, you just need to cut a meeting short, or maybe pause it. Because sometimes we don't realize that we do that, and using that like charged emotion to make decisions can really like negatively impact like the organization. Yeah. So I think like we have to kind of take a moment to think about when emotion is useful and when it isn't useful. You know, it's probably not useful when you're trying to make a decision, but it probably is useful when you're trying to express like your standpoint on maybe like a strategic plan and about how and expressive, like from an expressive standpoint. But if you're trying to use it to drive action, then we have to like, you know, take a step back to decide when it's useful and when it's not useful. So that's kind of what I learned recently. I was like, oh, wisdom nugget. Wow, so fascinating. So, yeah, and I try to, I came from a corporate world before, and one thing it taught me was that I never want to create that. I want to make sure that the space I create is psychologically safe for my community and Employ to Empower. So with that said, I try to think about leadership differently, and, you know, we talk about KPIs, and I think I read somewhere on LinkedIn about a model called KPIII, which is...
Oh, what are the I's?
So instead of key performance indicators, instead of that, keep people informed, involved, and inspired. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So it's like you inform people what's going on, transparency. Yeah. You involve people in like big decisions and big changes in the program, instead of saying, here's what we're doing differently now, versus saying, how do you think we can do things differently? And then keeping people inspired. So we continue to share the why, our stories. You know, at the Carver Project, we talked about that little video with Mark talking about, you know, you help us, we help others, and like the blue skies vision, and that is the point of inspiration for us. So if you can do those 3 well, goals will naturally be met. Yeah. But if you don't do those 3 very well, like that might be a reason why. Oh, that's so fascinating. So anyway, I'm just learning about that, and learning how to stay motivated, because sometimes there are days where you don't stay motivated and it sucks, and you think, oh no, but I should be motivated all the time. But that goes back to the whole human beings, not human doings. Yeah, you know? You're a human being, not a machine, right? Yeah. So, anyway. That was great. That was great, taking us on this whole journey and understanding that emotionally charged decisions might negatively impact your goal at the end of the day. And, you know, that ties into the whole KPIIs and keeping people inspired, but bringing a negative side to things when you're
making a decision or inspiring people negatively, that's not going to help you effectively reach a goal, you know.
Yeah.
So it all ties into each other, and you did a great job of explaining that. So thanks for sharing that with us.
Yeah.
So bringing it back to Employ to Empower, there are quite a number of very, very inspiring stories that have come out of Employ to Empower. And I'm curious if you would care to tell the story of any of your entrepreneurs at Employ to Empower and how they have impacted society and continue to do so today.
Yeah. Well, Carson, I'm going to talk about poo.
Very professional.
One of our entrepreneurs actually has a a poop removal service. Human feces removal service. That's what I meant. I had to give you a little bit of forewarning.
Yeah, of course, of course. Let them know. Tell them.
Carson's soul just left his body for a moment.
It did. If you're watching on YouTube, you get an extra little bonus there. But if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, you did not see anything. But I highly encourage you to go to whatever timestamp.
So there's a reason why I'm going to talk about fecal matter, I guess. Mm-hmm. But actually, so
if you're eating, I'm sorry.
Yeah, just make sure, I don't know, I can talk about anything when I eat, but of course not, that's not for everybody. But basically, yeah, in 2020, during the panini pandemic.
The panini press, yeah, the platypus.
Yes,
yeah.
the platypus. Yes.
She who shall not be named.
Yes, she who shall not. Kovivi.
Kovina. What are we doing right now?
So during COVID, we got a referral from our dear friend Austin, who works at East Side Works, and they are a lovely charity that helps people find little barrier work. So like picking up needles, keeping the streets clean, just called street stewards. And they said, "Oh, we got some guy named Mark. He wants to start his own business. He wants to clean up poo." And I was like, "Okay, all right, let's send him over. We'll meet at a coffee shop." Yeah. And I remember when we first met, he had this little iPad with him, and he was like, "Guess how many piles of poop I find on a daily basis when I do my street cleaning?" And in my head, I'm like, this is the first question he asked me when I meet him. I'm like,
first question.
Yeah.
Oh.
And he's full of charisma, this man. And
I love it.
I'm thinking, is this a joke? I'm like, 78. I just said a random number, and he's like, no. On average, it's 6.55 or something. It was like some calculated
it's like an actual calculated
Yeah, it was
number.
An Excel sheet.
Wow.
And he said, I want to do something about it because I've been living here for 25 years, and nobody does full pun intended, nobody does shit about it. So, and the city of Vancouver at the time, the methods that were used weren't exactly for example, if there's poop, it's clean and spray it.
Yeah, and it just gets everywhere.
Poop particles everywhere. Yeah, and shitstorm. So they're like
literally shit up the wall. No pun intended.
Yeah, and I went to them. I just met him. I'm like, you can have #messy Mondays, and he's like, okay, I don't know what you're talking about, but I just want to start a business to remove poo, and he was serious about it, and he's like, I want to start in 2 weeks. I remember thinking,
oh wow,
yeah, and I said, actually, maybe we could slow down and do this, because the basic business fundamentals course at the time it was basic business fundamentals, but now it's known as business skills building. BSB, Backstreet Boys.
Love it.
And he went through our first rendition of the skills training.
Wow.
And at the time, actually, Mark was homeless. I remember he did his homework. He would light 6 candles so he can see his paper, and he would do his homework.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and he came to class every week at the library because we had no office and no money at the time. So he took a shot on us as much as we took a shot on him. So, and he got his business plan up and running, and at first he was very skeptical. He's like, I already know all this. I don't need it. And then I remember at the end of the course, he's like, yeah, I guess I took this course. I'm glad I took this course. And I'm like, and I remember we did market research. It was hilarious. We had to figure out how much people would pay for you to remove a pile of, not animal poop, by the way, human poop. Because animal poop is being done, but human feces have a lot more hazardous chemicals. Sorry, I'm really going into this.
Yeah, well, it's a biohazard. Yeah, essentially, yeah.
So then since the pandemic, they've removed over 100,000 units.
Wow.
And I think they hired a couple people with disabilities to help remove the poop. So their vision is not only to have a cleaner Chinatown and downtown East Side, so that's improved tourism, but to also hire people with disabilities like themselves. Because the other co-founder, Elwood, he also has visual impairments and he has a bad knee. So they rip around the little mobility scooters around
Incredible.
the city, and they have a hazmat suit and they like remove everything. So that was like a really beautiful story of just, it really showed that people have strengths to contribute to their community. They just need the opportunity and the resources to do so. And, you know, we don't see ourselves as an organization that's like savior, because I think there seems to be a little bit of a traditional nonprofit paradigm there of needing to save people who are quote unquote helpless. But how we see it is that people have gifts to offer, and they just need to know where the door of opportunity is. And we're just a resource hub.
And look what happens when they finally realize their true potential, and how that can really spark within them.
Yeah.
You know?
And then I think that the slogan was trapping hearts as much as they trapping hearts as much as they trap crap. No, trapping I came up with so many slogans. We had like a whole meeting.
I like the trap crap. That's good.
Trapping crap as much as they trap hearts. Or
oh, that's good.
Cleaning up the streets one crap at a time.
That's good too.
Yeah.
I love these.
Yeah, they were a dynamic duo, and I must say, like, Mark left a legacy behind, because you know he had some serious health challenges near the end, and we honor him. We honor his legacy by having platforms like this to like share his story. And he always reminded us that you build us up, we build other people up, and that's our Blue Skies vision with the circular economy. In school, when people graduate from, I'll get the certificate with the Charles Chang Institute for Entrepreneurship, we believe that people should come back and become the resource themselves and help others, because they can, and such wasted wisdom if we don't. We want to make sure.
Certainly, yeah.
So anyhow, there's something about paying it forward that is really beautiful.
Yeah, and there's one, and I don't want to get too far ahead, because I do want to talk about the Cardboard Project, but when I was at Cardboard Project 5.0, there was a lovely conversation that happened in front of me between, and I forget what is it called, yarn bombing?
Yes, Deirdre.
Yes. She was just talking about the impact that she's had on her community as well, and it's such an inspiring story to hear, and I feel like our listeners need to hear this one as well, because it's just incredible how her journey has gone from this yarn bombing to this huge initiative just about like love and compassion and spreading cheer in society today, when it's not always in the greatest of places. Yeah.
Well, oh gosh, where to even start? Well, let me tell you about Deirdre. So she was our third entrepreneur that joined our program. And I remember when I listened to her speak at an event, I think it was called Beyond the Conversation, she was talking about how her yarn bombing journey was actually inspired by a couple of her close friends who had committed suicide. And she wasn't able to leave her house for a little while until, one of her rug cooking groups had invited her to come out to make art because they saw the value in her art. And she also posted up some words like, "You are not alone," "I care," "You matter," after her close friends had committed suicide. And as she noticed that through that art, it was a kind of an unspoken connection where people would see it and come and spark conversation. And soon enough, it became kind of like a gateway for connection. You'd see someone making art, and you'd be like, "Oh, like, what's that?" And you'd be like, "Oh, hey, how's your day?" And you kind of connect in that way. And we call her the notorious yarn bomber. And she's got some pretty good ones. She's got one that says "Bye Corona" with like music signs beside it during the panini. And
I love it.
She also has. She makes one. She made one for Black Lives Matter movement. She makes it for Pride. She recently got contracted by the BIA, East Village BIA, to like yarn bomb a pole with the pride the pride colors, which was awesome. And then she there's little things that she does that brings people together. She really believes in community, the unity in community. When we started doing mentorship, I noticed she did these beautiful rug cooking pieces. And there was one piece in particular that got a lot of attention, and it was a photo of Trump. And I remember thinking, Trump, why just better look into this a little bit more. And it happened to be a doormat. And through the doormat, it was for people to wipe their feet on. And anyway, it got some international attention. And she couldn't, I think the struggles was that she couldn't charge the piece of artwork for the price that it deserved, because she spent over 70 hours and you should sell it for like $300, which I'm like, oh my God, you should sell for a little bit more. But there was the missing piece of, cultivating that self-belief. Is like, oh, like, am I worthy for this to be sold double the price? Oh no, I'm not worthy. Therefore, I cannot sell the price at this at $700. And it took probably like 1 or 2 years of really practicing that muscle of I am
Yeah.
worthy, I can. And eventually she sold it for what it was worth.
Good.
And it was really beautiful to see that happen. And even now when we invite her to do speaking, it's just like $300 flat fee. And it's the way that, and I'm like, okay, good for us.
All right.
What you need?
Here we go.
And I'm like, I'm worthy of this. So here's my price. But like 2 years ago, she's like, just like $300 for like 70 hours of work. I'm like, I took a calculator and divided it. I'm like,
It's like, that's less than minimum wage, darling.
Yeah. But she's grown so much now. She's all over the news. She's getting
That's so
contracted
good.
and talking about mental health.
Yeah.
And she always believed in, if you're passionate enough about it, the money will come.
Yep.
That's why you have to figure out what energizes you,
Mhm.
what you're actually, skills-wise, what you're good at, and then you marry them both. And that itself is entrepreneurship. Sometimes people stray away from entrepreneurship because they think that it's this big thing where you're supposed to be making a lot of money, or you have to be like Mark Zuckerberg level or something.
Yeah. Well, that's another big conversation that we've had on the podcast as well in the past is there's many different forms of entrepreneurship and they come from a lot of different places. Like entrepreneurship is not just business people. Remind me what you did at SFU again. What's your degree?
Psychology.
Like, and now look what you're doing. Like, it's not always just this financial numbers, Dragon's Den, make money, have investors. It's not always like that.
Yeah.
You know,
Equity. I remember I sat at one event and there was many words I did not know about. Well, equity, I know what that is, but there was a lot of jargon around like the investment world and
such big fancy words that really who
cares?
And
just simplify it for me, honey.
Oh my gosh, please. But for those who don't know, yarn bombing
yes,
is it's like, I don't want to call it graffiti because it's not.
No,
it's not. And that was another thing that we talked about, is that it is a form of expression. It's a form of art.
Yes.
And you're putting yarn, like, just in public places.
Yeah, she started off putting yarn in chain link fences.
Yeah.
But then has expanded since.
Mm-hmm.
And I think she even replaced the Dude Chilling Park sign.
Yes. Yeah.
That was one of her best work. And she's all over the rug cooking magazines now. I think she came back and helped people find about $7,000 worth of grants, arts grants, because she also struggled getting those grants in the beginning, so she was paying it forward. So that's kind of a really lovely example of our circular economy, and she's now doing public speaking, and she's just evolved so much. And I think the most beautiful part is that at first she struggled to tell us that she didn't really need us anymore, and I think she felt bad about it, but then we realized it's actually a good thing that we're doing our work.
Such a great thing.
Yeah,
Like when you outgrow the capacity of something, is a huge sign of success.
Yeah, we're doing our job, I think.
Yeah.
And it's a sign, because we don't want to create dependence, we want to create interdependence. We want to help build you up so well that you can go off on your own. And every now and then, if you need us, which she does come back for the Pioneer Gatherings, which is a monthly gathering where all the entrepreneurs come together.
Yeah, of course.
And share their wins and challenges.
Yeah.
And then she literally came full circle. So that's Deirdre. And yes, yarn bombing is using yarn to put on chain link fences, and it's not graffiti. And she uses it as a way to connect with people and raise awareness about mental health.
Fabulous. So we're sort of in this place now. We've addressed the cardboard project. Talk to me about that. Like, let me tell you, right?
Okay.
I had one of the best times ever at the Cardboard Project 5.0. It just happened a couple of weeks ago, downtown Vancouver, and it was such a incredible showcase of downtown Eastside entrepreneurship works and what they do and the hard work that you do putting into these individuals to inspire them and to ensure that they are successful in what they're passionate for. And just seeing these displays of the work that they've done through whether it be the videos that were shown or the silent auction draws and all of these baskets that were available, they were all inspired by the entrepreneurs through Employ to Empower. It was just a beautiful showcase and such a charismatic fundraiser. And what did you raise again?
I think we raised about 48,000, which funds 10 people for an entire year.
$48,000.
Yeah, after
$48,000 is congratulations.
Yeah,
and just to think that you've done 5 iterations of this now. So now that I've talked about it, because I was just I was so inspired. I'm so inspired. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. So tell me about this journey of how it came about and the iterations and
Yeah.
It's so exciting.
Clearly, Carson is one of the most hyped guests that came and won one of the silent auction boxes.
I did. I won one.
It was a very engaging night, and
Mhm.
I think this was the first year the fifth version was probably the first time we ever phrased it as a fundraiser. In the past,
Okay.
it had never been like positioned that way. It was more so about storytelling and stigma shifting. We got feedback of like, yo, you could use this as a way to share some of the amazing talent that exists in the neighborhood that people don't ever talk about.
And be able to gain the funds to empower others in the future.
Yeah.
Continue bringing people on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It also was timely because our growth had tripled or quadrupled since we got the federal funding. So more people are coming into our program, and then we're like, okay, we just need to find the funds to make sure that we can keep it sustainable.
Yeah.
But version 1.
You did.
Oh, well,
Might I say?
Yeah. Yes. Thank you.
Found it.
Also with your support too, and paying for the box. I know that the silent auction was definitely part of the core memories, because I know that the entrepreneurs, like the sense of pride that we saw them have, like standing next to their box and be like, that's my box, that's my product and service.
Even the box that I ended up getting at the very end of the day, watching Michaela stand next to her box, and she was taking pictures, and she was like, no, the angle, this one, it needs to be this angle. I was like, this is so fun, I love this. And she was just so proud to have her work being shown. And since it's the whole, like, bring your own vinyl and all of the mental health and self-care and all of this, just everything that came with it was so well put together, and just browsing all of the other boxes as well, I'm just like, it was such a great time.
Yeah, and the fact that she has her own little studio now, Michaela, she's renting a studio to offer her services, and I've known her for a while now, and I've been so proud of her journey. It wasn't easy to get there, and
I can imagine.
Seeing her, now become an ambassador for us is lovely. So that's kind of like our most recent cover project.
Mm-hmm.
But version 1.0 actually lived under my bed. I can explain. So,
okay, I'll give you the floor.
But just kind of to speak to your question about like the journey of the Carver project and how it evolved. I think in the time that I started volunteering in the downtown east side, I noticed that there was a lot of people carrying cardboard signs. And oftentimes the signs had questions like, spare change, need a job, need food. And I realized, I was always walking past, I'm like, oh, this teaches me what this person needs, but doesn't teach me who this person is behind that cardboard piece. Behind this cardboard piece could be a friend, a father, a cousin, whatever it may be.
An aspiring entrepreneur.
And I thought, well, I wonder what would happen if we took cut up a bunch of cardboard and humanized the question, and with consent, take the responses that, I think the first question we asked, it was such a powerful question. I love the question. It was, what is something in the past that's changed who you are today?
Wow.
And we got answers like, I've been 16 years sober now, all the way to hearing my daughter's first heartbeat, all the way, trigger warning, getting stabbed 6 times and surviving. So it was very interesting to see there was themes that emerged from these responses. There was recovery, there was resilience, and it really showed me that there's a side that isn't seen and captured on the news, unfortunately. So at the time, I was just hoarding all these messages. I'm like, oh my God, there's so much this is the perspective that needs to be talked about a little bit more. During that time, I was still starting EDE, still talking to a lot of artists. And I talked to Marcel, who was an Ojibwe Indigenous artist in the downtown east side, and I talked about him at the Carver Project. But he was a fierce artist. He used to wake up at 3 a.m. every day to paint and create, also that his son can go to school and have a place to live. And I remember I was talking about this project. I'm like, I have like 100 cardboard pieces underneath my bed, and I just read them. He's like, well, I think the world needs to see this. Yeah. I'm like, yeah, but I'm not an artist. I'm insecure about like me not being able to make it into a mosaic. Then he said, well, I'll do it. He's like, give it to me. Yeah. I'll make it into something. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And then so that's how the Carver Project 1.0 began. So the 1.0 was mainly him storytelling, showcasing the art. We had a couple other guest speakers that came, and I think 150 people came to that one as well.
Incredible.
And he sold out all of his artwork, and it was really beautiful because he didn't really say it was the money that made the most impact. It was being seen as a person of value. Yeah. And then he proceeded to hand me a piece of paper with like 15 other people's names on it and said, call them all. Help them to give them what you gave me. And I thought, I just remember thinking to myself, there's something more that we can do here. And that's when I really fully developed all the programming mentorship. Started with Marcel.
That's where you truly fell in love with what you're what you're doing now?
Yeah, it was also like being falling in love with the approach of how we can do things differently.
Yeah.
And that kind of ties to, you know, really taking the time to understand the problem really, really well. And not just, you know, doing a couple of research, pulling a couple of papers together, like talking
seriously.
to people.
Yeah, having those meaningful conversations. That might be hard to have.
Exactly. And the solution actually came from the people in our program.
Wow.
So that's kind of nothing about us without us, that approach.
Yeah.
You can't create approaches or solutions without involving the people who you're trying to support, right? So.
Yeah. Well, and now look where you are. You know, 4 more iterations later, and you're raising tens of thousands of dollars to inspire these entrepreneurs and to continue giving them the resources that they need. Okay, ready for our final clap? 1, 2, 3. That was so good!
Our best one yet, third time's the charm.
Yeah. So this is going to be, we have a brand new segment on the podcast today called...
Say more.
Called Burning Questions. Insert fire sound effects. Insert train fire sound effects. Actually, that's a little graphic.
Is that the sound of fire?
So welcome to Burning Questions. It's a rapid fire segment where I have 22 questions to sequentially ask you, which involve no more than a sentence answer. We're going to close out this episode with a bang.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Or with a flame.
Let's dive into some burning questions.
Okay.
So first of all, what was your first job?
Dairy Queen. I was 14.
What's your favorite season?
Fall. Oh, I don't know why I yelled.
Where did you go on your last vacation?
Victoria.
Oh, lovely. Beautiful.
Yes, it was local.
I love that. Do you collect anything?
Pine cones and small things. Let me show you something.
Yes, show me. We also have I noticed you have a pine cone sticker on your laptop.
Look at this tiny volleyball. Small.
Is that a real?
Yeah. Well, you can just try hitting it.
I can tell you that is indeed a real tiny volleyball.
Yes, it is a tiny volleyball. I have tiny everything. Tiny. I have a tiny painting that my friend painted me.
Oh my God, I love it.
Of a mountain. It's literally this big. Her name's Carson, and she's an artist. So,
incredible. What is your favorite word in another language?
It's joy. Sharing joy.
I love it.
Which is coined by Brene Brown.
That's beautiful. What is the most unexpected skill you've developed as an entrepreneur?
I used return of investment in my report, which is finance.
Describe your entrepreneurial journey in 3 words.
What the hell? Courage, humility, and messy.
If you could give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
That you are damn well capable and that you can do hard things.
I love that.
And that you have everything you need to move through hard things.
I think everybody needs to hear that.
Yeah, it's a good reminder.
That's very good. What is the best book you've read for inspiration?
Probably Burnout by Emily Nagoski.
Coffee or tea to start your day?
I have an Asian margarita. Just hot water. I don't drink either.
The more you know. The more you know. Say sometimes my day starts with pre-workout. Like, I don't even do coffee and I don't even do tea sometimes. Like, it's just pre-workout, straight to the hard stuff.
Does it have, like, caffeinated?
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of caffeine in pre-workout. Like, we're talking hundreds of milligrams of caffeine.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Name a business leader who inspires you. Sorry, my computer is taking off right now.
I can hear it. My laptop used to do that as well. Karen from Lizzie the Label. They use recycled fishnets to make their clothes, and their clothes look like workwear, but it feels like pajamas. Her marketing is it's hilarious for one, and it's relatable and it's human.
I love it.
She shows the human side of being a leader.
Do you have a favorite productivity hack?
Yes, cycle syncing. What is that, you ask? Well, it's actually lining up big meetings and high cognitive items with your menstrual cycle. So yeah, when and when you're a woman, your hormones impact how you show up. So understanding our hormones of women,
Right.
and there's 2 weeks of the month where you're a little more reflective and low cognitive. So in those meetings, in those weeks, I schedule all the admin things, the things that don't require me to pitch or lead a meeting.
Oh, wow.
And then the latter 2, the follicular phase, the ovulation phase, is when you are more open and engaged. So I have all my big meetings in those 2 weeks.
I love it.
Yeah, so that's how I work with myself versus against myself as, a woman. So, yeah.
Nice. What is your go-to mantra for inspiration?
That you can be messy and marvelous at the same time.
I love it. If you could collaborate with any entrepreneur, who would it be?
Like, does entrepreneurs, do they have to start a business, or can they be an
No,
entrepreneur?
as we know, entrepreneurs come in many different forms.
Right. Thanks for reminding me of that. We're not really strangers, Corrine.
Ooh.
Yeah, I play her
love
cards.
We're Not Really Strangers.
Yeah, I play that game. I have all the versions. Whip it out sometimes, and we use it for our events, actually.
I love it.
So I wrote an email to her once, but she didn't reply.
Oh.
It's okay. Corrine.
If you're listening, there's an email in your inbox.
Check spam, honey.
Okay, so we've talked about this throughout the episode today. Describe the essence of Employ to Empower in one sentence.
A community where you can feel seen, heard, and validated.
Beach, mountain, or city getaway?
City, because I actually don't like to hike, nor do I like the beach. I know, it's kind of... I do like leaves. That's why I love fall.
Hence
so I
the
prefer to
favorite
be in the
season,
city.
I see. I love that.
But I would be dishonest if I said it was either beach or the mountains. Unless, I'd be carried up the mountain, then I would go.
Right. What is the most underrated skill for an entrepreneur to develop?
Probably the humility side of things, because I find that you see a lot of glitz and glam of success stories, and granted, you want to talk about the highlights. Shared struggle creates empathy, and it makes you feel less alone. So when you're able to share, like, the real struggles you're going through, well, one, you can relate and connect more, and you might even get some resources to help. So I think that humility is understanding that you know what you know and you don't know what you don't know.
In person or virtual meetings?
In person.
Share a hobby or interest that fuels your creativity.
I collect pine cones internationally.
What's your favorite way to develop... I'm sorry.
What? You jealous?
I love that. I collect sand from around the world.
Oh my god, do you have little vials for each one?
Not a vial, but so what I do is I go any beach, any beachy destination. I love the beach. That's why I put the beach question one. But whenever I'm anywhere with the beach, I collect some sand from it, and I fill a local water bottle.
Oh.
What is your favorite way to celebrate a business milestone?
Ooh. Well, I haven't been really good at that, actually. Yeah, to be honest. So my team helps me celebrate. Isa.
Your team?
Yeah, Isa, for our 5-year, I didn't even realize it was 5 years, she put up a happy 5-year anniversary banner in the office. I kid you not, I didn't even see it. And Isa's like, you notice anything different in the office? I'm like, no. But she's always good at, like, she's like the glue that keeps us all very connected.
I love it.
So yeah, she's helping me be better at that.
Incredible.
Yeah.
I got 2 more.
Okay.
So, how do you measure the social impact of your effort?
Through stories, I believe. Yeah, hearing people come up to you after they've taken a course. I don't know if I'm allowed to share a story. It's more than one sentence, but storytelling.
And last but not least, if Employ to Empower had a superpower, what would it be?
Probably acceptance. Being able to embrace the dark and light in people, because that's the reality. It's both dark and light make us beautiful.
Ooh.
So yeah.
Ooh.
That's kind of our superpower. We really invite people to come as they are and meet people where they're at.
And that is all I have.
And that concludes Choo-choo, y'all.
I have to take the time to thank Christina Wong for being our featured guest on the Inspiration Station podcast. It has been a joy having you today. Thank you for being here. Thank you.
And all the love to our beautiful host here who makes conversation very easy.
Oh, thank you.
And yeah.
The Inspiration Station podcast is brought to you by the Chang Institute for Entrepreneurship at Simon Fraser University.
Chang.
You can check out our podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and we have a special video documentation of our conversation on YouTube as well.
Really?
Yeah, if you are listening to this on streaming services, there is a video of us having these conversations, which I highly recommend watching because, I mean, well, we had lots of visceral reactions today that I think are necessary to provide context. That's all we have. So thank you so much for listening. We will see you on the next episode of the podcast. Until then,
Toodaloo, kangaroo.
bye.
Bye.